Let's bring up another grill master from the great state of Texas, Mr. Bowden-Distel, who is our head of intermodal solution at FreightWaves. Mr. Bowden-Distel, how was your Fourth?
It was fine. Sad to see Highland Park, Illinois, get shot up. One of the places that I've lived and place that my family lives. But other than that, it's fine.
Yeah, I did see that. I forgot all about that, but yeah, I did see that. That was unfortunate news. So you used to live over there, huh?
Oh yeah. My mom still lives there.
Oh wow. So hits very, very close to home. Anyways, let's turn towards rail service, my friend. Give us an update on what's going on there. We're now into the third quarter. Last year's third quarter was a little bit dicey, was it not? What's it looks like this year? What are the differences?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of discussion. Is the intermodal service going to be as bad this third quarter as it was last third quarter? And clearly there's some similarities there where things haven't changed. Like still the chassis availability is probably the biggest issue right now. There's congestion at these inland terminals. We've talked about that on FreightWaves Now before. Still a lot of drayage demand. Lack of warehousing capacity. All those things. What's maybe a little bit different, which may help intermodal service, is there's more domestic containers. Now with some of the domestic intermodal companies taking delivery of containers, the railroads really have made a big push towards hiring and more pressure from the STB to improve the service levels. Now that the STB is requiring the railroads to report all these different service metrics, and maybe the biggest difference is it's really unclear how much how well intermodal volume is going to hold up with the consumer retrenchment, with the inventories at very high levels at all the retailers. Just saw the other day that Amazon was pulling back on the number of new distribution centers and warehouses it was planning to open. I think it canceled like 13 different facilities it was planning to open. So clearly, I think there's some current concern in the total, if demand is going to be there. So it's almost like if you're bearish on freight volume, that might make you more bullish on improvement in rail service. All that being said, there's plenty of evidence that there's rail congestion issues right now. I was just reading, Greg Miller's article, citing LA and Long Beach, number of containers dwelling 9 days or more has doubled since February. And then Joanna Marsh, I think, published an article that just hit. We were talking about that the other day with the new data that the STB is requiring the railroads to report. Things like the average number of trains that are being held in any particular day because of lack of crewing or other reasons, and those have shot way up. If you look at just those data points, you would think that we really were going to have as bad congestion as you were in last year. So lots of headaches right now on the shipper side of things. Whether this persists or whether the demand just isn't there, I think is another question.
So, Michael, if we're having, trains being held, et cetera, because there's lack of crew issues, right? If that's one of those issues that is there, why the argument against the automation? Because we've heard from this from many different sources as well, trying to keep two people in the cab of the train instead of reducing it to one in order to say, but you can't run a train because there's not enough crew. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Of course, few things do.
You're right. It doesn't make any sense. But the unions are against anything that would cut their ranks, and it doesn't matter if it makes sense or not from the union perspective.
Well, I guess that's true. I've dealt with unions before. You've got a solid point there, my friend. That's absolutely true. Is the dwell time increasing at the Port of Long Beach, et cetera? How much of that is because of congestion at that port, and how much of that is this pushback because we're seeing this congestion on the inland side of things, right? Like in Chicago, how much is the congestion, I guess, in Chicago and Memphis, Atlanta, et cetera, pushing back towards the port congestion?
Yeah, so they actually the data they break it down to an extent. So they say the number of trains being held, and then they break it down by how much of that is due to lack of crewing, lack of power, not having the locomotives, and then basically other reasons. And lately, it's been those other reasons that they don't disclose. I mean, it really hasn't been. I mean, the crewing is maybe a quarter of it, but I think that's a big part of it that you bring up is the congestion at the inland points. And that seems to be, coming from the fact that the container ship lines are more willing to send international containers inland because there's been some easing in the availability of international containers. So you don't have that situation where they have to be transloaded into domestic containers. Also the lack of warehousing space on the West Coast encourages the containers to be sent inland. So, that seems to be really the big issue in addition to not having enough chassis and drayage availability. But I think that's having a huge impact.
Yeah, I mean, so there's concerns that are there if you're a shipper or if you're the rail, right? That this backup would push freight onto truckload, right? And kind of lose some of that volume, but you still got a fairly decent price margin to just let it sit and go rail, right? And there's a lack of urgency. So is there an issue there, or did those two factors just kind of say, let it sit for an extra 9 days or whatever it happens to be at the port, and we'll deal with the congestion because the savings is there and the urgency is not?
Yeah, I think it depends what products you're talking about and whether there's lots of availability there or not. I mean, it seems like, we talk about these inventory levels being at such a high level. That's certainly true for a lot of products. I don't think it's true for every product. I think there's some that are still in short supply. So it's almost like for some products, it doesn't matter if it takes another 9 days or another 18 days. Others are maybe going to have to move on the highway or be expedited or something. So I think it's going to be sort of both of those things.
Very interesting. What's the outlook for the rest of the year? What do you see interesting on the horizon for rail?
Well, I think volume is going to be challenged just with a slowing economy, and I think there's going to be a lot more fights between the rails and the Surface Transportation Board and with shippers in there too on service. So we're going to hear a lot about service from now until the end of the year. We'll see if the STB does anything that's more active. I mean, you could see something like streamlining the rate case process for shippers that want to contest rates. But I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about service, not just in intermodal, but also on the rail carload side.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Thank you so much, Michael. We'll catch up with you a little bit later. Always very, very interesting. You have a wonderful rest of your day there in Dallas, Texas, my friend. What do you say we toss it over to a quick break?